The hall was vast and cold, filled with glowing panels on the walls, and every seat was taken by young cadets from many alien worlds, their strange shapes and colors making the place look like a living gallery of the galaxy. Some had shimmering scales that caught the light. Others had long, thin limbs that bent like reeds, and some sat with heavy armored hides that looked more like walking machines than students. The sound of voices filled the air, a mix of laughter and whispers, pride and arrogance. At the front of the room stood the lecturer, tall and severe, his eyes glowing with a strange pale fire. He raised his hand and silence began to fall like a curtain over the crowd. His voice echoed in the hall as he wrote the words on a glowing board. The message was simple. The task was clear. Build a weapon with what you see around you. The words glowed brighter, as if they carried a weight heavier than the command itself. The cadets broke into laughter, their voices rising like a storm. They thought it was a trick, a joke, a lesson that had no meaning. Many of them imagined their powerful rifles, their energy blades, their plasma cannons. They could not understand why they should build something crude when their species had crafted machines that could tear apart planets. They mocked the challenge and looked at one another with smug grins, as if the very question insulted their intelligence. Among them sat one who was silent, the human. He had come as part of an exchange, a single fragile body among giants, a being from a world many called a death world, though most cadets did not understand why. He sat at the far back, his hands resting on the table, his eyes calm but sharp as if watching and weighing the laughter. He felt the weight of their stares. Some of them turned to him with cruel grins, whispering that he could not do even half of what they could, that his kind was primitive, slow, and bound to simple tools. The lecturer did not stop the laughter. He allowed it to grow and echo, but his gaze rested on the human more than once, his lips curling into a faint smile, as if he already knew how the story would unfold. The words on the glowing board burned brighter. Build a weapon with what you see around you, not with what you bring, not with what your kind already made, but with what exists here, now in this place. The cadets with scales and claws stretched their hands, forming devices from energy packs hidden within their belts. They created shimmering blades of pure light. Some called their family weapons. Some summoned drone makers to craft tiny guns. Others used molecular cubes to reshape metal into sharp edges. Every alien tried to outshine the other. The hall became a festival of sparks, hums, and glowing weapons, the sound of arrogance echoing in every corner. The human still sat quietly, his eyes drifting across the hall. He looked at the walls, at the chairs, at the tables, at the scattered scraps of discarded tools left behind from earlier classes. His gaze did not rise to the glowing devices. He did not reach for the tech packs at his side. Instead, he let the silence inside his own mind grow deeper, as if measuring the task, not with pride but with instinct, an instinct carved from generations who fought not with lasers, but with stone and wood and fire. The aliens noticed his stillness. Their laughter grew louder. Some pointed at him. Some whispered that he had already given up, that he had no skill, that he would fail, and fail in front of them all. They laughed with cruel joy, their voices ringing against the tall ceiling, like a chorus of mockery. But the human did not answer. He only placed one hand on the chair before him and waited. The lecturer raised his head again, his voice slicing through the noise. "You have 1 hour," he said. 1 hour to craft your weapon, to show what you are, to reveal how you fight." The room went quiet for a moment and then roared again with movement. Cadets rushed to show their power. They bent light, twisted metal, summoned drones, shaped plasma into whips of glowing fire. They displayed their greatness to one another, to prove they were stronger than any other species. Yet at the back, the human stood, his hands resting firm on the chair. He pushed it to the side. The wood creaked against the floor. His grip was steady, his face calm, and he looked around the room once more, his eyes heavy with thought. The aliens noticed and sneered, mocking louder than before. But the lecturer leaned forward with interest, the faintest gleam in his glowing eyes. The task had begun, and though the room was filled with alien wonders of light and sound, the true story waited in silence, hidden in the calm focus of the one student who did not laugh, the one student who did not boast, the one who was ready to raise more than a machine, ready to raise something older, simpler, and far more dangerous. The hour had begun, and the hall shook with noise. Sparks flew as alien cadets shaped their weapons, each one trying to outdo the other. The smell of burning ozone filled the air as beams of energy split metal, and strange drones buzzed to life. The students shouted with pride as they summoned blades, rifles, and strange curved devices made of glowing crystals. The laughter was loudest when their eyes turned to the human. He was still at the back of the room, standing over the chair he had touched. His face showed no hurry, no panic. He was calm. The aliens, however, saw weakness. A scaled cadet, with burning red eyes, called out across the room. Does the human even know what a weapon looks like? His kind is still chasing animals with sticks. The crowd of cadets burst into cruel laughter. Another, tall and thin with arms like wires, sneered. Maybe he is building one of his little fire pits. Perhaps that is all humans know. Fire and smoke. The words echoed like arrows, meant to pierce the human's pride. But he did not react. His hands moved slowly, carefully. He gripped the chair, dragged it across the floor, and slammed it down. The sound was sharp, louder than the hum of plasma and the buzz of drones. The room went quiet for a breath, startled by the sound. Then the human lifted the chair high. With a single sharp motion, he slammed it against the edge of the table. The wood cracked. Splinters burst into the air. The cadets blinked in shock. The human lifted one broken leg from the wreck. It was rough, jagged at the end, but it was sharp enough to pierce. His fingers wrapped around it as though it were a tool shaped long before machines existed. His silence made it heavier than any glowing rifle. The laughter began again, though not as strong as before. "Is this a joke?" one cadet shouted. "He breaks furniture and calls it a weapon." A four-eyed alien with skin like whetstone jeered. "Look at him, trying to look dangerous with wood. Primitive, pathetic, laughable." But the human only lowered himself to one knee. He pressed the wooden leg against the stone floor and began to grind. His movements were steady, as if sharpening a blade. The scraping sound filled the silence, a harsh and steady rhythm, louder than the buzzing of alien machines. The cadets watched, confused. Some shook their heads. Some smirked. But a few felt unease, though they did not say it aloud. The lecturer stood silent at the front of the room, his glowing eyes fixed on the human. Unlike the students, he did not laugh. Instead, he watched with interest, lips curling at the edges. The scraping continued until the end of the wooden leg grew sharp, not polished, not perfect, but sharp enough to cut. The human tore a strip from his sleeve, wrapping it tightly around the base for grip. The sound of cloth ripping carried across the room. The cadets stopped their work for a moment. He rose again, holding the broken chair leg, high like a spear. The aliens laughed again, though this time their voices cracked with uncertainty. "That's it," one shouted. "He builds a toy spear." Another shook his head. "Even a training drone could shatter that thing." The human did not answer. He stepped forward, his movements slow and steady, his eyes fixed on the front of the room where the lecturer stood. His silence weighed more heavily than any insult. The lecturer finally spoke. His voice was deep and carried across the chamber. "You all see what has been made, but remember the rule. Build a weapon with what is around you, not what you carry, not what your ancestors made, what you find here." The alien cadets looked at their shining devices and paused. Many had used hidden packs, tiny fragments of their own technology. They had bent the rules, but none dared argue with the lecturer. They fell silent, their laughter fading. The human raised his spear. His stance was firm, balanced, and strong. He looked like a hunter ready to strike. For a moment, the air in the room shifted. Some cadets swallowed hard, though they tried to hide it. The sight of a sharpened spear, simple and raw, awakened something ancient in them, something they had long forgotten. The lecturer's lips curved into a faint smile. His voice cut the silence again. "A weapon is not only what it looks like. A weapon is what it does in the hands of the one who wields it. You will now prove what you have built." The room stirred with confusion. "Prove," the cadets whispered. The lecturer waved his hand, and the floor of the hall shimmered. From the light rose a massive form, a simulation beast, scaled and roaring, taller than 3 cadets stacked together. Its eyes glowed red. Its teeth shone like blades. The ground shook as it stepped forward. The cadets shouted in alarm, but quickly raised their glowing rifles and blades. The laughter was gone now. The test was real. One alien aimed his plasma rifle and fired. A glowing beam tore through the beast, burning a hole straight through. But before the cadet could cheer, the simulation twisted, its body reforming as though the wound was nothing. The beast roared louder, lunging forward. The cadet stumbled, terrified, firing again and again with no effect. Another cadet rushed forward with a blade of light. He swung hard, cutting deep into the creature's leg. For a moment the cut glowed, but then the leg reformed as though the blade had never touched it. The beast slammed him aside with one sweep of its claws. The hall filled with chaos. Rifles fired, blades struck, drones swarmed, but the beast endured. The cadets' pride crumbled into panic. Their advanced weapons became useless toys against a creature designed to test more than technology. At the back, the human watched silently. He did not rush forward. He studied the beast. He studied the way it moved, the way it roared, the way its body shifted when struck. His grip tightened on the spear. His eyes were calm, not fearful. The lecturer saw him waiting. His voice rose again. One by one you will face the beast. Each of you will fight with the weapon you have made. We will see who truly understands the meaning of survival. The cadets looked at one another in horror. Their glowing weapons, so beautiful and proud, had failed. Now each of them would face the monster alone. The first stepped forward, shaking, rifle in hand. The beast roared and charged. The cadet fired again and again, but the creature crashed into him, shattering the simulation only when the student was pinned to the ground. He rose unhurt. The simulation could not kill, but his pride was broken. Another stepped forward with his blade. The same result. Another with drones. Another with whips of plasma. None succeeded. Each fell. The alien students began to whisper in dread. Their eyes turned toward the human, who still stood waiting with nothing more than his wooden spear. The beast roared again. The lecturer's voice cut through the air. Next, the human stepped forward. His simple weapon gleamed under the hall lights. The cadets went silent, watching. The laughter was gone, replaced only by unease. And for the first time, some of them wondered if the primitive weapon in his hand was not weakness, but power. The chamber trembled as the beast shifted its weight, claws raking across the polished floor with a sound like tearing steel. The cadets shrank back, eyes wide and fearful, their glowing weapons now symbols of shame rather than pride. Every attempt they had made had failed. Their technology had been useless. Their arrogance had been broken. All eyes turned to the human. He stepped forward without rush, his movements calm and measured. In his hands he held only the sharpened chair leg, bound with torn cloth. Primitive, crude, fragile compared to the energy rifles and plasma blades that had already failed. And yet, as he walked, there was no laughter, no jeering. The silence was heavy, thick and alive. The human's eyes never left the beast. His grip on the spear was firm, steady. His posture was low, balanced, like a hunter ready to strike. The cadets, who had mocked him minutes earlier, now whispered among themselves. How can he fight with that? One muttered. It will snap in an instant, said another. Perhaps he is mad, whispered a third. But none dared laugh. The lecturer's glowing eyes followed every step the human took. He said nothing, only observed, a faint smile tugging at his lips as though he alone understood what was about to unfold. The beast roared, its voice shaking the very walls. Saliva hissed against the stone floor like acid. The cadets shivered, but the human did not. He crouched slightly, spear angled forward. His breathing slowed. His muscles coiled with tension. For a moment, the room seemed to freeze. Then the beast lunged. The creature's bulk filled the air, claws extended, jaws wide with teeth like blades. The cadets screamed warnings. Energy rifles fired uselessly from the sidelines in reflex, beams of light passing through the projection without effect. The human did not move until the very last heartbeat. At the instant the beast's weight descended, he lunged forward instead of back. The spear thrust upward with precision, meeting the beast's chest in the exact spot where its roar left a gap in its stance. The sharpened wood drove deep. There was a blinding flash of light. The The beast screamed, its body shattering like glass. Fragments of glowing code exploded into the air before vanishing. The hall fell silent. The human stood in the center, the broken spear still in his hand, its tip smoking faintly. He looked at the place where the beast had been, then lowered the weapon. He breathed slowly, his eyes calm. The cadets were frozen, their mouths open, their weapons hanging limp. Not a single one had succeeded against the beast. Their advanced technology had been useless. But the human, with only a chair leg, had ended it in a single strike. Whispers spread through the room. It is not possible. He cheated. He must have cheated. No, I saw it. He struck at the right moment. That beast fell to a stick. The lecturer finally broke the silence. His voice echoed deep and commanding. You have seen. Weapons are not power. Power is in the one who holds them. Tools mean nothing without instinct, without precision, without courage. His eyes swept the room, resting on each cadet, their faces pale with disbelief. You built your weapons from pride. You thought strength comes from shining blades and glowing fire. But you forgot what it means to fight. This human did not forget. His people never forgot. The cadets shifted uneasily in their seats. For the first time, they looked at the human with something more than arrogance. There was unease in their eyes. Some even looked away, unable to hold his calm, steady gaze. The human walked back to his seat at the rear of the hall. He placed the spear across the table and sat. He did not speak. He did not boast. He only waited, his expression unreadable. The lecturer continued. This exercise was not about building machines. It was about survival. On worlds of death and storms, when no technology remains, when the ground itself turns against you, what then will you use? Will you break? Or will you rise with nothing but what your hands can shape? He pointed to the broken spear. This human shaped nothing into something. A stick became a weapon because he knew how to make it so. He passed. The rest of you failed. Gasps filled the room. Many of the cadets protested. It is unfair, shouted one with scales of green. We followed the task. He broke furniture like a savage. Another, trembling with anger, hissed. Our weapons were real. His was trash. Yet he is rewarded. The lecturer's voice cut them down like thunder. Your weapons were shells without spirit. They were not born from thought. They were toys. You placed faith in the machine, not in yourself. That is why you failed. The protest died. No one dared answer further. The human sat quietly, his hands folded, his eyes fixed on the glowing board where the words of the task still shone. Build a weapon with what you see around you. He had obeyed. Nothing more, nothing less. The silence stretched until finally the lecturer's tone softened. Look at him. You called him primitive. You called him weak. But when danger rose, his instinct and courage ended what your machines could not touch. Do you still call him lesser? The cadets looked again at the human, but this time there was no laughter, no smirks, only unease, and in a few, a shadow of respect. The lecturer turned back to the board. His glowing hand swept across the surface, erasing the words. The hall dimmed. His voice carried one final message. Remember what you saw today. In this academy, in this galaxy, pride in weapons means nothing. But a human with a stick may one day stand against armies. If you do not understand this truth, you will not survive. The session ended with a single strike of his staff on the floor. The cadets filed out in silence, their heads lowered, their pride crushed. The human remained behind for a moment, looking at the broken spear on the table. He reached out, lifted it once more, and studied the sharp point. His face revealed no triumph, only thought, as if the test had meant more to him than anyone else realized. He finally set it down, turned, and left the hall. The echoes of his footsteps were the only sound in the vast chamber. Behind him, whispers had already begun to spread among the cadets. Whispers that would not die. Whispers about the human who raised a chair leg as a spear and defeated the beast with a single strike. The academy hall still echoed with the fading whispers of what had just taken place. The broken chair leg, crude and simple, lay across the table where the human had set it down. The beast that had shrugged off plasma fire and glowing blades was gone, shattered by the strike of wood in human hands. The cadets filed out in silence, but silence did not erase their unease. It made it grow. By the next day, the whispers had turned into stories. Every corridor buzzed with them. He killed it with a stick, some said. Others claimed it was no ordinary strike, that the human had tricked the simulation somehow. Rumors spread fast. Some tried to laugh them away, but the laughter was weak and thin. For every denial, there was the memory of the hall, the roar, the strike, the beast collapsing. The image would not leave their minds. When the next lesson began, the lecturer stood once more at the front of the chamber. His eyes glowed as always, cold and sharp, but there was a deeper weight in his voice this time. You saw what happened. You felt it, and yet many of you still do not understand. Today we continue. Today, you will learn the lesson of fear. The room shifted uneasily. The cadets avoided each other's eyes. The lecturer lifted his staff and struck the floor. A shimmer spread across the walls, and again the simulation engine came alive. The air thickened, light bending as something new began to form. This time it was not one beast. It was three. They emerged with a thunderous roar, claws tearing against the floor, fangs snapping, eyes burning like fire. Larger than before, their bodies shimmered with a strange glow that made them look almost alive. The cadets gasped in horror. Some lifted their weapons without thinking, desperate to feel ready. But the lecturer raised a single hand. No machines today. No devices hidden in your belts. No drones. No energy blades. If you wish to fight, you must use only what is here, as the human did yesterday. You will build your weapons again. The cadets froze. Panic rippled through them. How can we fight these with nothing? One shouted. They are bigger. Stronger, cried another. This is madness, a third hissed. The lecturer's voice was merciless. Fear is the first enemy. If you cannot face it, you are already defeated. The beasts roared again, their claws scraping sparks as they paced in a circle. The human sat quietly, his face calm, his eyes steady. He had not moved when the simulation began. Now he stood, slowly, his hands brushing across the tables and chairs. He bent low, testing the strength of wood, pulling apart scraps of metal left from broken furniture. He worked in silence, shaping what was at hand. The cadets stared at him, some with disbelief, others with anger. He makes another spear. One muttered bitterly. Does he think the same trick will work? But the human did not answer. His movements were steady, deliberate. He pulled one chair apart, splintering its legs. He bound them together with strips of cloth. He shaped a sharper tip against the floor once more. The sound of scraping filled the air again, harsh and steady. The beast snarled. The cadets trembled. The human kept working. The lecturer watched him closely. His eyes glowed brighter, as if this was the moment he had been waiting for. Finally, the human lifted the new spear. It was crude, imperfect, yet again sharp enough to kill. He tested the weight, balanced it in his hand, and then stepped toward the beasts. The cadets gasped. He is going alone. The lecturer said nothing. The beasts turned at once, their eyes locking on the single figure walking forward. Their jaws opened in roars that shook the hall. The cadets flinched back, but the human did not. His stride was steady, his grip firm. The first beast lunged. The human sidestepped, quick as a shadow. His spear thrust upward, grazing its chest. The beast staggered, roaring louder, its body rippling with distorted light. The cadet's eyes widened. The strike had marked it. The second beast attacked from the side. The human spun, lowering his stance. The spear jabbed low into its leg. The beast shrieked as its form flickered. The cadets began to murmur. The third came from behind, jaws snapping. The human dropped flat to the floor, rolling aside just as the jaws closed where he had stood. He rose again, spear ready, eyes never leaving the creatures. He was not stronger. He was not faster. But every movement he made was precise. Every strike was timed. He was not fighting with desperation. He was fighting with instinct. The cadets clutched the edges of their seats. Their glowing weapons had failed. Yet this human, with wood and cloth, was holding his ground. The beasts circled him now, their growls low and furious. He crouched, breathing slow and steady, his spear steady as stone. Then the lecturer's voice cut through the noise. You all feel it. Fear. Look at your hands. They tremble. Your eyes dart. You whisper to each other. You fear the beasts, but more than that, you fear him. The cadets turned sharply toward the human. Some opened their mouths to protest, but the words died on their tongues. It was true. They feared him, not because of a spear, but because he fought as though fear had no hold on him. The beasts lunged again, all three at once. The cadets cried out, but the human did not falter. He moved with deadly calm. His spear thrust into the chest of the first, spun to strike the leg of the second, and then swung in a wide arc that forced the third back. The creatures shrieked, their bodies flickering wildly. Finally, with one last lunge, he drove the spear deep into the chest of the largest. Its roar turned into a shattering scream as its form burst into fragments of light. The other two dissolved with it, their connection broken. The hall fell silent again. The human lowered his spear, breathing steady, sweat running down his brow but his stance unbroken. He looked at the spot where the beast had been, then turned and walked back to his seat. He set the weapon down and sat, his eyes calm, as though nothing had happened. The cadets stared in silence. None spoke. None laughed. The lecturer's voice broke the stillness. Fear is not the enemy of humans. It is their teacher. They do not deny it. They face it. And when fear rises, they do not fall back, they strike. That is why he succeeded when all of you failed. He looked across the hall, his gaze heavy on every cadet. Remember this lesson. Fear will come for you again and again. If you hide behind machines, it will eat you alive. But if you carry courage in your heart, if you fight with what you have, you may yet survive. The cadets bowed their heads, shame burning in their faces. Some clenched their fists in anger. Others sat frozen, unable to shake the image of the human standing against the beasts with nothing but a spear. The lesson was clear. The fear they had mocked now belonged to them, and it would follow them, whispering in the shadows of their pride, every time they saw the human's calm eyes. White heavy checkmark word count. 1,200 exactly. The hall was quiet long after the beasts had vanished. The cadets sat frozen in their seats, replaying every movement they had witnessed. The human's body had seemed small against the towering creatures, his weapon fragile against their armored hides. Yet with each step, with each thrust and turn, he had shown them something that none of their glowing rifles or elegant plasma blades could match. He had shown them instinct. The lecturer let the silence linger. He wanted them to feel it, to let it sink deep. Then his voice rolled through the hall, low and steady. What you saw today was not luck. It was instinct, sharpened by struggle. It is what has allowed humans to rise on a world that should have killed them long ago. He struck his staff against the floor. The sound echoed like thunder. The walls shimmered again. A new trial was about to begin. The cadets shifted uncomfortably. Some muttered protests under their breath. Others tried to hide their fear by sitting straighter. But all eyes were drawn once again to the human. This time, the simulation that formed was not a beast. It was a battlefield. The stone floor melted away into cracked ground, scorched and uneven. The air shimmered with heat, the walls dissolving into the illusion of a wide desert plain. From the distance came the sound of thunder. Not natural thunder, but the rolling march of enemy soldiers. Figures appeared out of the shimmering light. Dozens of them, tall, armored, and armed with glowing rifles. Their eyes burned with red light, their steps shaking the earth. They spread out into formation, weapons raised. The cadets gasped. The lecturer's voice carried above the sound of marching boots. Now you will fight not a single beast. Now you will face numbers. The battlefield does not wait for arrogance. It consumes the unprepared. Survive this, and you may begin to understand. The alien cadets lifted their heads in fear and anger. How can we fight an army with scraps? One shouted. This is impossible, cried another. But the lecturer gave no answer. His eyes glowed with expectation. The human moved first. He did not hesitate. He crouched low, scanning the broken ground. His eyes narrowed as he picked up a jagged piece of stone. His fingers tested its weight, then tossed it lightly and caught it again. He was not afraid of its roughness. He was measuring it, as though it were enough. The cadets watched in disbelief. Some of them scrambled to break apart tables, pulling sharp edges of wood and metal. But their hands shook. Their movements were frantic. The human's movements were calm, deliberate, as if his body already knew the rhythm of survival. The army of red-eyed soldiers advanced, their glowing rifles humming with deadly light. The ground shook. The cadets panicked, lifting crude sticks and half-shaped blades in trembling hands. The lecturer raised his hand. Go! The battlefield erupted. The first wave of soldiers fired. Blazing beams of light cut across the ground. The cadets screamed and scattered, throwing themselves behind scraps of cover. One was struck by a blast and fell, crying out as his body dissolved into sparks. The simulation could not kill, but the pain was real. Another cadet swung wildly with his broken blade, striking one of the soldiers. The blow glanced off uselessly. He was thrown back by the rifles, but his body breaking apart into glowing fragments before reforming at the edge of the field. One after another, the cadets tried. One after another, they failed. Their movements were clumsy. Their hearts were panicked. They thought of escape, not survival. Then the human moved. He ran low across the broken ground, rolling behind a jagged rock. The red-eyed soldiers turned their rifles toward him, but he was already gone, slipping to the side like a shadow. He lifted his stone, waited for one soldier to step closer, and then struck with precision. The rock smashed into the soldier's helmet. The form cracked, flickered, and burst into fragments of light. The cadets gasped. The human did not pause. He dropped the shattered stone and grabbed the fallen soldier's weapon. His hands turned it quickly, testing its weight, his eyes studying the glowing core. He crouched low again, rifle ready, but his stance was not the stance of an alien soldier. It was the stance of a predator. He moved through the battlefield like water. He never stood still. He never fired wildly. Each shot he made was precise, tearing through the red-eyed soldiers, one by one. He darted forward to seize another weapon, then hurled it aside when it ran dry. He picked up pieces of broken metal and hurled them like daggers, striking with impossible accuracy. The cadets watched stunned. This was not training. This was not the show of someone desperate. It was the raw, burning instinct of a survivor. One cadet whispered, "He moves as if the battlefield belongs to him." Another muttered, "He does not fight with fear. He fights with purpose." The lecturer's voice cut through the storm of battle. "Do you see? He is not stronger than you. He is not faster. But he has lived in struggle. Every step, every strike, every breath is shaped by survival. This is instinct. This is what you lack." The battlefield grew louder. More soldiers surged forward. The cadets screamed as they were overwhelmed. They swung their crude weapons without aim, falling again and again. But the human endured. His body bled with sweat. His arms burned with strain, but his eyes never broke. He fought like one who had lived this battle 100 times before. He crouched low behind another piece of cover, gripping his crude spear again. His chest rose and fell, but his focus never wavered. He lunged forward once more, striking a soldier through the chest. The projection shattered in a burst of light. Another soldier came at him, rifle raised. The human twisted low, sweeping the spear across its legs. The figure fell, and he struck again, breaking it apart. Every movement carried the weight of his world's history. The instinct of hunters, warriors, survivors, all carried within one man. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. When the last soldier finally dissolved into fragments of light, the battlefield grew still. The desert plain faded away, leaving only the academy hall once more. The cadets lay scattered, exhausted and humiliated. The human stood alone in the center, his chest rising with deep breaths, the crude spear still in his hand. Silence filled the chamber. The lecturer finally spoke. His voice was not cruel now, but filled with heavy meaning. "You call humans primitive. You call them weak. But look at what you have seen. With nothing he fought. With instinct he endured. With courage he survived. And you, armed with glowing toys, fell." His eyes swept across the room, burning into each cadet. "This is the lesson of instinct. You cannot buy it. You cannot program it. You cannot steal it. It must be lived. It must be bled. That is why he passed, and you failed. The cadets lowered their heads in shame. Their arrogance was broken, their pride crushed. Yet their fear remained. Fear not of the lecturer, nor of the simulations, but of the quiet human who sat at the back with his crude weapon, his calm eyes, and his unshaken spirit. For the first time, they began to wonder. If this was what one human could do in a classroom test, what could an army of them do on the battlefield? The academy hall was filled with silence. Not the easy silence of comfort, but the heavy silence of revelation. The cadets, beaten in body and pride, sat in scattered rows. Their weapons, bright and flawless, lay forgotten. Their eyes, once sharp with arrogance, were lowered, unable to look at the human who had stood alone against the impossible. At the center of the room, the human sat quietly, a broken spear across his knees. He was not smiling. He was not boasting. His hands rested on the crude weapon, his breathing slow and steady. To him, it was over. To the cadets, it was only beginning. The lecturer struck his staff against the floor. The sound echoed like a drumbeat of judgment. His glowing eyes swept across the room, burning into each cadet one by one. "You do not understand," he said, his voice low and commanding. "You saw him fight. You saw him strike. And you think it was chance. But this was not luck. This was not trickery. This was humanity." The cadets shifted uneasily. Some clenched their fists. Some looked at the human with fear. Others looked at him with a spark of something new, something unfamiliar, respect. The lecturer raised his hand and pointed to the broken spear. "Look at it. Crude, fragile, worthless in your eyes. Yet in his hands it became death. Why?" No one answered. The silence stretched, suffocating. "Because a weapon is nothing without the one who wields it," the lecturer said. "You relied on machines. You placed faith in light and metal. But he placed faith in himself, in his instincts, in his will to survive. That is why he succeeded where you failed." The cadets lowered their eyes further. Shame burned in their faces. The lecturer stepped forward, his voice growing stronger. "You mock humans. You call them primitives, death-world vermin, creatures who stumbled into the stars too early. You laugh at their sticks and stones. Yet you forget why they reached the stars at all. You forget the truth of their world." He struck his staff again, and the hall shimmered with light. The simulation engine came alive once more, but this time it did not summon beasts or soldiers. Instead, it showed a world, a planet of raging storms and endless oceans, lands covered in fire, deserts that burned with heat, forests filled with predators larger than ships, a world of chaos, violence, and death. "This," the lecturer said, his voice echoing, "is Earth, the human homeworld." Gasps filled the hall. The cadets stared in disbelief at the vision of the planet. "You call it a death world," the lecturer continued, "and you are right. Everything here is born to kill. The air itself turns against you. The seas rise to swallow you. The ground shakes with fury. The creatures hunt with tooth and claw, poison and trap. And yet," the vision shifted. Tiny figures appeared on the screen. Fragile, hairless, soft-skinned. Humans. They carried stones in their hands. They raised fire in the night. They fought beasts 10 times their size, with nothing but sharpened sticks. And they won. Yet they endured, the lecturer said. Not by strength, not by speed, not by claws or fangs. They endured by instinct, by will, by shaping anything into a weapon. They endured because fear did not break them, it sharpened them. The cadets sat frozen. The images on the wall showed humans through the ages, hunting mammoths, standing against storms, building fire in caves. Every scene echoed with the same truth. Fragile bodies, unbreakable will. They fought their world, the lecturer said, and they won. And when their world was not enough, they fought each other. With sticks, with stones, with blades of iron. They bled for every step forward. And in time, they forged ships. They left their world. They stepped into the stars. The simulation shifted again, showing human ships rising from a surface of Earth, crude and small compared to alien craft, but relentless. They pushed outward, spreading to moons and planets, carrying the same stubborn will. You think them weak, the lecturer said. But weakness does not leave a world like Earth alive. Weakness dies in the mud. What survived, what rose, was strength unlike anything you have known. His voice grew louder, harder, like steel striking steel. That is what you saw in this hall. Not just a human, not just a spear. You saw the echo of a world that forged him. You saw what it means to be the child of Earth. The cadets shifted again. Some swallowed hard, their pride cracking under the weight of the revelation. Others stared at the human with wide eyes, as though seeing him for the first time. The human himself sat quietly. His gaze was fixed on the images of Earth. His face showed no pride, no arrogance, only thought. For him, this was not a performance. It was truth. The lecturer stepped closer to the cadets, his eyes burning brighter. Do you understand now? This is why I brought him here. Not to entertain you, not to humiliate you, but to teach you, to show you what it means to fight with nothing, to remind you that survival is not in the weapon. It is in the heart. He turned toward the human and spoke with respect. Rise. The human stood, spear still in hand. His posture was calm, steady. The cadets watched him, every eye fixed on his figure. The lecturer's voice dropped low, but it carried to every corner of the hall. This one passed because he remembered what all of you forgot. The battlefield will not give you what you want. It will not offer you weapons forged in light. It will strip you bare. And when that moment comes, you must either create or die. He created. You did not. The hall remained silent, every cadet weighed down by the truth. The lecturer let his staff strike once more. The simulation dissolved. The walls returned to stone. Only the human and his broken spear remained. You fear him, the lecturer said finally. And you should, because he is what you are not. He is what you must learn to become, or you will fall. The words sank into them like cold blades. The lecturer turned and began to leave the hall. His final words echoed behind him. Today you saw a lesson. Tomorrow you will live it. Remember what the human showed you. Remember Earth. Remember instinct. The great doors closed behind him. The cadets sat in silence. No one spoke. No one laughed. The only sound was the quiet breath of the human, steady and unshaken. And in the silence, the seeds of fear and respect grew together. For the cadets finally understood. The human was not their equal. He was their reminder. The academy's great hall felt different the next morning. The walls were the same. The seats were the same. The glowing lights hummed as always. Yet something heavy lingered in the air. The cadets who entered did not laugh. Their voices were quiet, their movements subdued. They remembered too clearly the day before. They remembered the spear. They remembered the beasts. They remembered Earth. At the back, the human sat in silence. He had no weapon this time, no broken chair leg across his knees. Yet the cadets still gave him space, as though the air around him was dangerous. Their eyes slid to him and away again, some filled with fear, others with something far more unsettling, respect. The doors opened with a deep groan, and the lecturer entered. His staff struck the floor, and the sound echoed like thunder. He stood tall, his glowing eyes sweeping across the chamber. Yesterday, he said, his voice strong, you saw what pride brings. You saw how fear exposes weakness. You saw instinct in its purest form. Today, you will see the final lesson. The cadets stiffened. None dared protest this time. The lecturer raised his hand, and once again the walls shimmered with the glow of the simulation engine. The floor trembled. The air grew heavy. But this time, what emerged was not beast or soldier or battlefield. It was a council chamber. Tall figures appeared, projections of ancient alien leaders. Their robes shimmered with authority. Their eyes glowed with judgment. They looked down upon the cadets with cold, dismissive stares. Around them floated banners of worlds conquered, victories won, empires raised. The weight of power was in their very presence. The lecturer's voice carried. This is the test of the council. Not the beasts of instinct, not the armies of survival, but the voices of judgment. This is the lesson of how you will be seen in the galaxy. They will not test your weapons. They will test your worth. The cadets shifted uncomfortably. Facing beasts was terror. Facing councils was humiliation. The projections spoke, their voices sharp and cutting. You are weak. You are children. You play with light and metal and call yourselves warriors. Without machines, you are nothing. The words stabbed deeper than claws or fire. The cadets lowered their heads. Some clenched their fists, but none answered. Then the voices turned toward the human. Their tone changed, laced with scorn and disbelief. And you, fragile creature of a death world, what are you without your stick? Without your sharpened wood? Nothing. Less than nothing. The cadets glanced nervously toward the human. Would he stay silent? Would he break under the weight of those voices? The human stood. Slowly, calmly. He stepped into the center of the hall, where the projections glared down upon him. His eyes did not lower. His voice, when he spoke, was steady and clear. I am human. I am from Earth. My world tried to kill me before I could walk. My world starved me, burned me, froze me. Beasts hunted me. Storms broke me. Fear lived in every shadow. And I survived. Not with machines. Not with glowing toys. I survived because I learned to make anything into a weapon. I survived because fear did not crush me. It sharpened me. You can call me weak. You can laugh at my spear. But you cannot deny what you saw. I endure. The chamber was silent. The projections of the council leaned closer, their glowing eyes narrowing. Their voices hissed like knives. Arrogance. Defiance. Primitive pride. But the human did not flinch. It is not arrogance, he said. It is truth. And you fear it. The words rang like steel. The cadets gasped. No one spoke to the council that way. Not even simulations. Yet the human stood firm, his voice carrying like a blade cutting the silence. The projections hissed again, their forms rippling with anger. But then, slowly, one of them smiled. The lecturer's staff struck the floor once more, and the projections dissolved into sparks of light. The hall returned to stone. The silence was thick. The lecturer's voice was softer now, but filled with power. This was the final lesson. You must face beasts. You must face battle. But above all, you must face judgment. The galaxy will call you weak. It will call you primitive. It will laugh at you. But if you carry the truth of who you are, if you endure, then no council, no empire, no world can break you. That is the lesson humanity carries. That is the lesson you must learn. The cadets bowed their heads, the truth too heavy to deny. Some still trembled with anger, but others quietly nodded. The lecturer turned toward the human. His eyes glowed, but his voice carried respect. You have shown them more than words. You have shown them what cannot be denied. You have reminded them of what they have forgotten. The human gave no reply. He simply set his hands at his sides and returned to his seat. His face was calm, but his eyes held the quiet weight of centuries, the burden of a world that had forged him through fire and fear. The lecturer's final words echoed through the chamber. Remember what you witnessed. Remember Earth. Remember the spear. The galaxy may laugh, but when the laughing ends, humanity will remain. And if you do not understand this truth, then when war comes, you will fall before them. The staff struck the floor. The lesson was done. The cadets rose slowly. They did not rush to the doors. They did not speak. Each of them carried the same heavy thought in their minds. The image of a human, standing calm and unshaken. The echo of words that cut through fear. The truth of a world that would not forgive weakness. Outside, the academy's corridors were alive with rumor once more. But this time, the whispers did not mock. They warned. They laughed at him. They called him primitive. He fought beasts. He fought armies. He stood before the council. And he never broke. The whispers grew like fire. And with them, something darker grew in the hearts of the cadets. Fear. For they finally understood. The galaxy had always laughed at humans. But when the laughter stopped, it was never because humans were weak. It was because humans had already won. And deep within the academy, at the back of the hall, the human sat quietly, the ghost of a spear still in his hands, his eyes calm as stone. He needed no words, no boasts. His silence was the sharpest weapon of all.